G'day champions. Randall RD100, so 100 watt head. Owner just purchased this and tried it out, and he said it got really hot. I think he said excessive hum, and he said it just needs a good clean and service as well, and he wants me to go over it. He buys a lot of second-hand stuff and then just gets me to check it over, if not do some improvements. So just a look at the rear, all your typical connectors, just having it geese inside. Oh man, it looks like there's almost no getter flash left on those. Just looking through under those retainers, and you can already see there's tons of dirt on everything, so I think there's going to be a lot of cleaning up before we even get to testing. So it's just a couple of screws in the rear panel here. It's just like an expanded mesh, powder coated. It's sort of a double-sided tape there, so it's trying to stick to it. Here we go. Watch not to cut yourself on the edge of that stuff, it's pretty sharp. Alright, so lots of cobwebs. Looks like the valve's got almost no getter left. Getter flash, you can see right through the tops of them there. If Penny Boy wants to focus, yep, there we go, we'll go manual. Lots of spider webs, lots of dust and dirt. So it's pretty common for amps that have a top vent in the top of the cab for stuff to collect in that area, but this is all through it, so this has never been cleaned, I reckon, since the day it was made. It's probably been stored in garages, which is a bad one, because old garages were built cheap back in the day. They were like an afterthought for the house, and they cut a lot of corners off, and they were built by the owner of the house, who wasn't necessarily a certified builder. So things like tiled roofs with no sarking, so all the dust from the wind and the leaves and shit from the trees comes in under the tiles. So yeah, if you're going to store stuff in a garage, box it up, seal it up, and put some desiccant packs in there with it as well, some large ones, and they're not too cheap when they're the large satchel ones. They cost a little bit, but it's worthwhile doing because it'll protect your gear if it's in storage for the long term. Alright, isn't that delicious? So suffice to say, she needs a little bit of a clean and possibly a new set of valves. It's just another view straight from the top. It's all over the transformers. So all the valves have to come out, get a good clean. I'm not even going to turn this thing on in this state, so we're going to have to give it a clean first and inspect the bottom. Inspect its bottom. Alright, so let's take the valves out, known as tubes, around half the planet. I call them valves because that's the UK word for it, and we're closer to UK than the States. Although we all just signed a big happy submarine deal, so that's something. I want a submarine, I want it now. Alright, we've got rubies here, I just cleaned the writing off, whoops. Yeah, not much getter there, eh? I don't reckon they came with... I don't think they came with that little getter. The getter's gone got some, so there's a bit less there than stock, I believe. Anyway, carry on. They might still function fine. Someone posted, one of my colleagues posted the other day, they had a set of, I think it was General Electric 6L6s, new old stock, and they didn't have any getter. It looked like they didn't even have the getter, like the ring, the getter itself. Not sure what the deal is there. I'm not old school enough to know of valves that didn't have getters. Maybe they're meant to be used in space where there is no oxygen anyway. But they don't just get the last of the vacuum. They absorb any off gas that the elements might give off when the valves heat up. So they've got more job than just getting rid of the last of the oxygen in a valve envelope. Let's take the retainers off so I can get in there with a vacuum brush and proper vacuum it. Alright, so it's clean enough to touch it now at least. I didn't even want to touch it before, but it's a powder coat. It's pretty much untouched under that, so we'll give it a bit of a clean with a little bit of diluted detergent, and it should come up pretty much like new. Not a lot can be done about the rusting on the transformer laminates, but it doesn't matter either. Those bell housings should clean up well with a little bit of just slightly soapy water. I get some of this stuff on a wet rag, just like one spray of it, and just rub that in, and then a dry rag afterwards to clean it off. Alright legends, look at that. It's like a brand new bought one. Cleaned off all the fly puke and spider webs and dust, and gave it a quick clean. The transformers came up pretty good. Looks very nice. Alright, so inside the chassis is a different story. It's very clean, so that's good to see. Reasonably logical layout. We've got a separate board for the power supply and output valves. They are PCB mounted, but you know, don't hold that against them. If it's mounted correctly, it's not a problem. You've got a separate board across the back for all the jacks, all the I/O. There is a little microcontroller down there, H50, H050, and that's your MIDI connector. MIDI? Foot switch connector, sorry. So that's your clock generator, that's a microcontroller with the label on there showing the program, and that's your foot switch. So that would do all your channel switching brain boxery. And then your preamp at the front, and your novel valves, yes that's a word, and the looks like a regulator down there. And there is some bipolar regulation here as well. You just tell from the chips and their local filtering. Right, so that big chunky fuse there, that's for the heaters. You've got your octal output valves here, 4 of them. Then you've got your phase inverter down there on the end. And then you've got 2 cathode fuses. So you can see pin 1 and 8. This, I haven't looked at the schematic yet. I think I've got one, but we can do all this without. You've got pin 1 and 8 via fuse there, and another fuse there for the other 2 valves. That one is blown, so I think we may have a shorted valve. So I'll get this set of ruby valves back in. It looks to be the original valves, being all ruby, and we'll see how they perform. Looking at the getter, starting to go on that one. They're probably due for changing, but you never know. We'll try them out and see how they go. You can see here on the glass envelope there, there's been a bite taken out of that glass in that little spot there too. See there? And on all of them. That's another symptom of these valve retainers. The little segment in there where the spring rubs and vibrates against it. Not great. Sometimes can actually crack the things. These have survived it, but you can see it's made it's taken out quite a little chunk of glass from the constant vibration, so yeah. Now I see quite often on forums and Facebook groups people checking for a shorted valve, and they just take it out and meter out all the elements, and oh, nothing's touching anything else, so the valve can't be short. Well, that's not how it works. When that thing heats up, things inside them move. But also a short's not necessarily a hard short like metal touching metal. One of the elements might have just moved right next to another one where it's a lot easier to emit some angry little electrons, and that forms like a little short through the actual vacuum of the valve once it's warmed up, that you wouldn't be able to measure at room temperature with the potentials offered by my little Fluke 1790. She's not capable of that. So people also will throw valves into a valve tester of various types of ill repute, and some that just aren't suitable for the task. And you know, valves will test good, and then they'll throw them in their amp, and the amp will short them out or whatever. because the valve tester's testing them to like 200 volts, or some of them like not much higher than wall voltage. So when you throw them in a Marshall that has 500 volts on the plates and 480, 495 on the screens, things go bad. So you often hear me say the valve tester is the amp. That's because there's not many testers out there that actually abuse the valves or run them up to the level that an amp will run them to. So you can test till the cows come home, they all test good, you throw them in an amp, they blow up. So what worth is that tester's results? Nothing. Oh wow, look at this. I don't know if you can see that. The legs wiggling. Must be a fracture in there, or it's loose on the glass. It's still got vacuum, but it's like a loose tooth. So we're gonna have to change that one out. Can't leave that. So I just grabbed it to see if it was still attached, and it just fell out. So that's actually fractured, and now that valve is useless. So I'll put a new one in there and check all the others as well. So we've got the Telltale Peacock in there. It's a piss vane. Everyone loves a good piss vane. That's a 12AX7. In my experience, they're all pretty much noisy and microphonic. Popping and crackling and stuff sometimes happening where they sort of burn in a bit. But in a phase inverter position, they seem to go okay. The noise isn't as highly amplified afterwards. So we'll give this a go in this position. That's the phase inverter. It's right next to all the output valves. See how it goes, and if there's any issues, we'll go to a Tube Amp Doctor, Premium Selected, blah blah blah. Champions, so I did something pretty dumb. I was doing my usual DC resistance measurement across the output transformer primary, and things weren't making sense. So then I realized, hang on, these, once I traced it out, had a look, these trim pots here, they don't adjust each side. Or overall bias and balance between each side. They're inner and outer pairs, so you can't really use that method to measure this accurately, because you're just getting an overall measurement of both those pairs added up per side. So I probably could have noticed that if I actually read the labels on the top of the panel. It said inner and outer pair, but yeah, I never said I was smart, did I? So anyway, so I put the valves back in and we blew a fuse straight away. So that valve is short, hard short, this one here. So I'm going to put a new set in. They don't look that healthy anyway. The getter's almost gone on that one. So we'll pop a new quad in. I ran that by the customer, he was cool with that, and he'd like to start on you know, the ground floor on this one and make sure everything's rock and roll. And it sounds fantastic, I might say. So let's do that, and we'll bias them up and see where we're at from that point. Now we've changed the phase inverter too, which was causing a bit of weirdness and crackling and popping and stuff as that pin was making and breaking contact. Got a new set of 6L6 GCM-STR Red Base Select Premium Super Ultra Mega Awesome Series from Taddy's. Taddy's are my go-to for everything at the moment. I order them directly from Germany if I can, but if I need small batches, need them in a hurry, I'll get them locally from my favourite supplier over here, Where's Components. So these are great. You can see there, look at the size of the getter. It's halfway down the valve. Then you look at that next to the rubies that were in there, there's almost nothing left. You can see inside there, that's the double getter version. It's neither here nor there, it doesn't affect tone or anything, but it's just an observation. And that's got the single one there. Anyway, carrying on. Alright, so I'll try that again. Flicker on. Drawing, settling down to about 50 watts. Standby. Got the trim pot set to minimum on both inner and outer pairs. Turn around to standby. Alright, we've got 20 milliamps on the inners and 18 milliamps on the outers. So that's rising slightly as they warm up still. 19, sorry. So, I'll put the camera down, I'll give it a bit of a tweak, optimize that, and let it burn in for half an hour or so, and then recheck measurements, check that everything's stable, and then we'll plug it in and have a sound test. Alright, so I've measured the actual resistance of those two current sense resistors there, and they actually are one actual ohm. So that's important to do. Often when you've got a shorted valve, often there's not a fuse in line with them. They can drift in value from overcurrent, and they go high and they stay that way, and then that can cause all sorts of problems with your measurements and the operation of the amp. So it's important to check that, particularly when you've had a shorted valve. So I'm going to lift the outers. We're going to aim, I've calculated about 63 milliamps per side, so that corresponds to millivolts per inner and outer, you know, not side, but you know what I'm trying to say. So we'll go to say 70, because it's going to sag when I bring the other side up, because the voltages will do things and drop as the current draw rises. So as we bring up the other pair, you can see the other one's dropping as well. Okay, so I went a bit far, so 63 millivolts we're aiming for, thereabouts. They're a bit touchy, those pots. Alright, we're about there. We'll check the plate to cathode voltage and go again if we need to fine tune it. So now the current, so now the power consumption for the wall's gone up to about 120 watts, which is about what you'd expect to see a 100 watt amp idling at. So I'm happy with that. Now I'll just check the plate voltage and adjust if required. Alright, so reference to ground, 479, say 480. Just check the screens while we're there, just make sure they're all even. Careful not to slip. 476, 477, 477, 476. That's good. Alright champions, so we're back on the video bench. Just been shuffling stuff around so we can do some sound samples and see what this thing sounds like with my terrible playing. So got the meters again on the cathodes. We're just gonna keep an eye on that, make sure it's all stable. It's gone a little bit out, but it's still settling in. When you put a new set of valves in, it takes them probably at least an hour until they sort of start to settle on the current draw that you'll see consistently over the rest of their life, until it obviously starts to go downhill as they age. But you generally go up about 5%. When you first put them in, they run a little bit cold without adjusting anything. It will naturally rise a little bit, it seems to, in my experience anyway, and then it sort of settles about, I don't know, 5 milliamps higher than it was when you first plugged them in without changing anything. Alright, so straight away on the clean channel we've got some fluctuating noise. Hear that? Let's change the channel, see if it goes away. It does not go away. Is that the piss vein I put in? Let's see if removing the phase inverter gets rid of it. Let's put one of my favorite valves in there, the Tube Amp Doctor 12AX7 Premium Ultra Mega Super Select Series. I got a feeling those piss veins aren't worth pissing on. Let that warm up for a sec. Crackling gone. Fucking hell. So, as retailers, we are the dumping ground of shit. The thing with valves is you order 100 of them, you can't test them all straight away, can you? And then you test them and they think they're used because you've opened the box. It's like Schrodinger's valve. So if you don't return them in the warranty period, which for valves is usually less than 12 months, they won't honour any warranties, and you're stuck with them and you can't do anything with them. You can't honestly sell them on to a customer. So you end up the dumping ground of all the shit, and you send them back and they go, yeah, we tested them, there's nothing wrong with them. And they haven't tested shit. They just say they've tested them and you don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing wrong with them. You're not getting a refund. Pay postage if you want them back. Again, pay postage 4 times. That's fantastic, isn't it? So, piss vane 12AX7s are fucking shit. Don't buy them. Alright? I've had this experience several times recently. I thought it might be okay in phase inverter, but no. Alright, so new problem. This is going to be impossible to return as well because I bought them in February 2022. Hear the rumbling there? It's coming from the output valves. That's the 6L6s. So these tube amp doctor valves are fucked. Brand new, match quad. And they're useless. You got the piss vane fucking rattling along there as well. I'm sick of this, honestly. It's such a liability selling valves. Listen to the fucking shit going on there. Pull out the PI. Throw in the tube amp doctor one. Now all that bullshit's sorted. Let's try another piss vane. Let's try all of them, fuck it. I've really got the shits now. Are they all shit? I ordered 10 to try them out. Are they all shit? Got a feeling they might be. Let's let that one warm up, see what it does. Should do a video on this, but honestly it pisses me off so much I wouldn't enjoy making it, so. So like, could we even use that for a tremolo or something? Maybe it's too shit even for that. Alright, so I just talked to my local rep. Let's see how he goes. He said it's just over 12 months by 1 month. So we're at 13 months now since the purchase. Let's see if he can do anything for me. But in the meantime, I'll pop another quad in there because those are fucking shit. That second piss vane seems to be okay. Who knows how long for. Now you can just hear here acoustically that these are very rattly valves. Like you tap on the bench when they're in the amp and you can hear them rattle acoustically from the actual valve itself. So that's always a sign that they're not in the best condition. Alright, so these ones are coming up. They're sitting a little bit cooler, but like I said, they'll go up a bit after they've been warming up for a bit. Alright, so you can see here, I haven't changed any settings there. That's risen from about 55 up to 60 just by warming up for an hour or so. So now I think we're ready to give it a sound test, champions. And you get to suffer through my playing. Sucked in. So this is everything just 12 o'clock. This is one of the few high gain amps that has a really nice clean channel. So let's listen to that. Now, when I'm playing through an amp, I'm not playing to impress you guys. I'm playing to hear things that might cause issues, like those high bending notes I was just playing up the upper register around near the 12th fret on the unwound strings. That will show up any ghost noting like it's going out of fashion. So I'm not playing to impress you guys. God knows I am not going to impress anyone anytime soon with my playing, but the things we're playing, Lyle cops a bit of heat for this as well. People say he's noodling. He's playing things that show up issues with the amp. That's his ultimate goal, to make your amp rock solid, right? So he's playing things that will make any imperfections in the amp stand out like dog's balls. So that's why we play some stuff that's not necessarily musically attractive or incredible, you know? It's to show problems with the amp. Alright. Clean channel. Everything 12 o'clock. Gain 1 channel, everything 12 o'clock. Gain 1 channel, everything 12 o'clock, boost button in. Everything 12 o'clock, gain 2 channel. Everything 12 o'clock, gain 2 channel, boost button in. Gain 2 channel, everything 12 o'clock, boost button out, gain at 75%. So yeah, this amp's fun, I won't lie. It's pretty simple for what it is. The only sort of complexity is with the foot switch circuit there being a microcontroller, but the only gripe I've got, it says on the front Diablo all tube amplifier. There's 2 op amps there, there's transistors all over the place, there's switching FETs and friggin' you name it. So it really is an all tube. 2SA 1015s everywhere, J112s, J10 somethings, can't read it. But yeah, there is some op amp stuff happening there as well. But anyway, let's not penalise them for that. So essentially at the end of the day, this one had some shit valves. It was very dirty. And the one last thing I'm going to do is clean the shorting jack on this input, shorting contact on this input jack, because it's not muting as reliably as it should. Hear that? So I'll give that a bit of a clean, and we'll note all the measurements we've taken, and she's ready to go back to the customer. Alright champions, so one final test before we put it back in the cabinet. Just got our dummy loads over on the wall there, feeding it 1 kHz sine wave, and there's the output on the scope. We're sitting at around 8.5 volts RMS there. I'll just bring up the signal generator and we'll note the voltage where it starts to clip, and we'll write that on the invoice. Right, so we're just rounding off the top of the waveform there at about 28 volts, and the bottom starts hitting the wall at about 30. So we'll set that to, say, I don't know, 10 watts or something, and just make sure everything's stable over the long term. But we'll note down that maximum power output, and we'll double check that once we've had it under test for another hour. So if we were to go off the voltage where the top just starts to square off, or not even, just starts to distort, you're talking about 26 volts RMS there, which corresponds to about 85-ish watts. So often, you know, this is marketed as an RD100. It's upside down there, but you can see what I'm saying. The 100 watts is a lot to do with marketing, but you know, they quote it at an undisclosed distortion level, so they've kind of got free rein there to take a bit of poetic license with the old power rating. Everyone does it, you know. You'd be the odd one out if you didn't. Well, with the exception of maybe some of the JMP Marshalls and stuff with the big ass transformers, they hit 110, 100, sometimes 120 watts clean with no visible distortion on the scope at all. But at the end of the day, who gives a shit? Because like, you know, the difference between 5 and 10 watts and 50 and 100 watts is like 3 dB, so it's barely noticeable. So don't sweat the power output unless it's significantly off, and that may indicate some other issue with your amp. So happy days. See you on the next one, legends, and I'll try to think of some better riffs next time, although I do love that riff. Good old Anthrax. See you on the next one.